Okay, so like trying to land a tech job these days, it's a little intense out there, put it mildly.
Yeah, competitive feels like an understatement.
Totally. And things are getting wild when a random Reddit thread sends everyone into a total tailspin.
Oh, tell me about it.
But that's exactly why we're doing a deep dive today, right?
Yeah.
Got to unpack this whole thing that went super viral on r/scarier questions. For those not in the know, it's like the online hangout for computer science folks.
Career advice, memes, the occasional meltdown, it's all there.
And boy, did things get melty when a Berkeley CS professor decided to drop a truth bomb, claiming even ESHA students, like the 4.0 GPA superstars, were getting absolutely zero job offers.
Zero. That's rough.
Right. And even went there, implying that this whole job market shift, yeah, it might be reversible.
Oof. That's not exactly what anxious job seekers want to hear.
Talk about an online freakout. I mean, as Berkeley we're talking about, you'd think their grads would be, like, immune to this stuff.
Well, it's definitely got people talking, which is, the point of a deep dive like this. But before we all spiral into existential job market dread,
Which is tempting, by the way.
we've got to remember this is one person's experience. Even a professor at Berkeley. It's a single data point, right?
True. Anecdotal evidence, as they
Exactly. So while it's definitely worth exploring, we can't just hit the panic button based on one person's experience. We've got to be careful about jumping to conclusions,
Always a good idea, especially when it comes to something as important as, the future of your career.
Right. So as you're listening to this deep dive, keep in mind that the broader context matters a lot. We've got interest rates doing their thing, the whole post-COVID world shaking things up.
It's a lot to unpack, which is, the beauty of a good deep dive.
Exactly. So with that in mind, let's dig into some of the reactions from the Reddit thread itself, because as we know, the internet never disappoints when it comes to hot takes.
And man, did that Reddit thread deliver. It wasn't all, like, doom and gloom, though. Once people got past the initial shock, there were some really interesting counterpoints.
Because let's be honest, the internet loves a good counterargument.
For real. Like,
Yeah.
one user, Google Duck, I think it was, totally called out the whole irreversible job market thing.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, they were like, where's the data, dude?
Mm.
And even linked to their old schools, like publicly available employment stats. Turns out their grads were doing just fine.
Okay, so maybe not time to panic just yet.
Exactly. And then there was this other commenter, Scary Joey, who shared about their friend from, like, a totally average university, by the way.
Not another Ivy League prodigy.
Yeah.
Shocking.
I know, right? But get this, the friend landed a solid tech job after, like, 2 months of searching. No big deal.
See, there's hope. This is why I love those threads, such a mix of perspectives.
Totally. Makes you realize maybe this whole Berkeley thing, IS a bit, like an outlier.
Could be. Which is why it's so important to look at the big picture, not just one-off stories. Are there actual trends here, or is this just like a Berkeley-specific blip?
Data over drama, right?
Yeah, always. And to be fair, while the data does show things are tougher than, say, a couple of years ago.
It was kind of a free-for-all back then, wasn't it?
Totally. Companies were throwing money at anyone who could code. But even though it's tougher now.
Tougher doesn't mean impossible.
Exactly. Like, tons of those Redditors were still landing jobs. It just might take a bit longer, a bit more hustle.
Maybe this is just, like, the job market's version of back to reality.
Right. After an insane sugar rush, we're back to, regular dessert. Still pretty sweet.
I like that analogy. But speaking of sweet, the Reddit thread had a whole other layer to it. Not just complaining, but actually, like, helpful advice.
Oh, so they went from panicking to problem solving.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
fucked finance. Love that username. They went on a whole rant about how new grads lack, like, basic job search skills.
You mean showing up on time and looking presentable? Revolutionary.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Apparently not so much. Late to interviews, clueless about salary expectations.
Speaking of salary, maybe a reality check IS in order.
Yeah, for sure. Because we are talking about Berkeley grads here. So,
Yeah.
like, what's a realistic number for them to even be aiming for?
Right. Context is key. So according to levels.fyi, they're like, the go-to for salary data, the average starting salary for a software engineer in the Bay Area.
Prime Berkeley territory.
Exactly. It's around $130,000. But big caveat here.
There's always a catch, right?
It's just an average. It could be way higher or lower depending on the company, the role itself, your skills.
Experience probably matters a ton too, right?
Totally. A Berkeley degree opens doors, no doubt. But companies are looking for more than just a fancy name on your resume.
Gotta walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. They want to see those soft skills, communication, problem solving, the whole package.
And then there's networking. I loved that story from Forever Wandered about their wife.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't it something about a cruise ship?
Yeah. Apparently, she just happened to chat with someone who ended up offering her like a six-figure job.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time. Although, to be fair, it's not always about, formal networking events.
True, true. Sometimes it's just about being open to connecting with people, right?
Exactly. And you never know where a conversation might lead.
That's what makes life interesting. But okay, back to the job hunt wisdom from the Reddit gods. One thing that kept coming up was, the importance of real-world experience.
Which, let's be real, is often way more valuable than a 4.0 GPA.
Tell me about it. And juice it. If you're listening, you were preaching the gospel on this one.
Preach!
Internships, personal projects, that's the stuff that makes you stand out, right?
Absolutely. Companies want to see you can actually apply what you've learned. They want proof, not just promises.
It's like anyone can ace a test, but can you build something? Can you solve a real problem? That's the real question.
And that's what companies are willing to pay for, right? Results.
Makes you think twice about pulling an all-nighter for a slightly higher grade.
Maybe a good night's sleep in a side project is a better investment?
Right. Okay, so we've got this, perfect storm brewing. Tougher job market, pickier companies, GPA not being the golden ticket it once was. But hold on, because the Reddit thread didn't stop there. It also zoomed out to the, mega trends shaking up the tech world.
Because context is everything, right?
Totally. And one thing that came up a lot was offshoring.
Which, for anyone lucky enough to have missed this fun trend, is when companies basically move jobs to countries where, well, it's cheaper.
Yeah, gotta love that. And this one commenter, Lambrusco, brought up the H-1B visa program. Whole other can of worms.
Right, on one hand, it helps companies get the talent they need, but on the other, it can make things even tougher for U.S.-based grads.
It's complicated for sure.
Life is rarely simple, unfortunately, and neither is the economy. Which brings us to another big factor, interest rates.
Disgruntled Pie dropped some serious knowledge about that.
Yeah, their point was basically that with higher interest rates, investors are getting, shall we say, a little more cautious.
Meaning those blank checks for any startup with a cool-sounding app, yeah, those days are over.
Pretty much. Investors want to see a path to profit, a sustainable business model, not just potential anymore.
Which explains why we've been seeing so many layoffs and hiring freezes, even at the big-name tech companies.
It's a reality check across the board, and like Mike 312 pointed out, it seems like companies are now laser-focused on their core products.
Makes sense. Got to keep the lights on.
Exactly. So less experimentation, fewer moonshot projects, at least for now.
So, wrapping all this up, if you're about to dive headfirst into the tech job market,
With your perfectly crafted resume and your portfolio of amazing projects.
don't forget those soft skills.
Absolutely. But seriously, it's easy to feel overwhelmed with everything we've just discussed.
Totally. But here's the thing. While this Reddit thread started with one kind of scary claim,
It turned into this awesome, crowdsourced survival guide.
right? We had data, we had real talk about salary expectations, and even some heartwarming networking stories.
Don't forget the tough love about interview skills.
Oh yeah, gotta be professional people. But the biggest takeaway for me, this whole thing showed that, yeah, the tech world is changing fast. But it's not all doom and gloom.
Not even close. It's just like a wake-up call. Time to be strategic, adaptable.
And maybe learn a thing or two from random Redditors. Because sometimes the best advice comes from the most unexpected places.
Truth.
So to everyone out there hustling for their dream tech job, you got this. And hey, if this deep dive helped even a little, make sure to subscribe for more insights, rants, and maybe even a few laughs along the way.
Because navigating the tech world is way more fun together.
See you in the next deep dive.